RockPointe Church, how you doing today? Happy Labor Day to everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. Let me get rolling right into it today. Two quick things. First of all, last week I talked to you about how we're a family, and I gave you 3 places that the family is in need, and it's 3 places to serve coming up. And one of those was children and students, another was production, and another one is in guest services. And I want to tell you, thank you for all of you who responded. Awesome. So proud of you for stepping up. There are people serving right now who responded to that last week. So proud of you, both here and in Liberty Hill. So excited about that. And let me tell you, there are still some places and some gaps as we go into the fall. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, if you go, oh, hey, I could help with that. And let me just give you a warning. Go ahead and make the decision. Oh, yeah, I could help with that. Because there's a point in the message where you're going to go, oh, I should help with that, right? So I just want you to know ahead of time. I don't want to sneak up on you. There's just a point, and I want you to know about it. So here's how you help. You walk right through those doors of the back of your auditorium, and you walk right out to that connection center where it says, how can we help? And you just say, I'm ready. And you say, hey, I'll serve in one of these 3 places, whether it's kids and students, production, or guest services, and just dive in and start helping your church family, because all of us should have a plan to serve one another. And we'll talk a little bit about that. One last thing is we've got this coming up starting next week. I think y'all got that. Maybe y'all got that logo for me. We're starting a brand new series. That's not it. There it is. We're starting a brand new series next week called The Weight of Our Words. And I'm telling you, I think it will be powerful for all of us because we are in a culture where words really matter. So that's coming starting next week. So today, I thought I would wrap up this series by starting with a couple of quick polls just to get an idea of who you're sitting around today. And here's the first one. It's super important. It's an easy way to judge the people around you and maybe understand them. So is this, where are all of the toilet paper should go under people? Where are you, right? It should go under. Where are all the over people? Are you there? Okay, we're over people. Few under people there, right? So the question is how do you roll, right? All right. Here's another one. This is like a softball, right? We're tossing a softball. Where are all of my DP people, right? Much more excited about DP than you were toilet paper. And how about all of my Coca-Cola people? Right? Okay, that's me too, right? Okay, I'm with you. How about this one? Where's all my beach people? Where's all my mountain people? All right, yeah, you're getting it, right? How about this one right here? This one's super important, right? This one's super important. Greatest of all time, right? The GOAT. Where's my MJ people? How about LeBron? Okay. All right, Liberty Hill, I'm not sure how that went with you, but man, that one really floated completely different. The dude just won a gold. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, but hey, I'm going with you. Now, how about this one? Where's all my cat people? They say you start looking like your animals, so whatever. Where's all my dog people? I totally set you up for this one. Where's all these people? Where are all the winners? The losers and the winner people. So I got a confession to make. Before we go any further. I'm not sure how I feel about being in a church with under Dr. Pepper, Beach, LeBron, Cat, loser people, right? I'm not sure. I have anxiety over that, right? How about one more? How about this one? No, get it off our screen. I'm totally kidding. Just get that off the screen. Yeah, we're not ready for that, right? We're too fragile for that, aren't we? Maybe by the end of the message we could get there. But what I want you to pay attention to in all of this, and specifically that last one, is the tension in that. Because doesn't it seem like in our world today that people disagree more often and more intensely than ever before in our lifetime? And we've always had disagreements, but now some of the most basic questions of human existence are actually being debated today. like what is a moral virtuous behavior, or what is the value of a family, or what is the role of men, or what is the role of women, or what is a male, what is a female, or what are the rights of children. And there have been disagreements, but they've become more frequent and more fierce in our society. And let me just tell you, with that disagreement comes fear, which is interesting because that fear that we feel makes topics like vaccines and policing and race and immigration and sexuality and gender and abortion and gun violence. Fear makes all of those things more explosive and divisive than ever. Okay, now that I've got everyone's undivided attention and we're all sweating bullets wondering where this message is going, today we are continuing our series called Friendology, and we've been talking about the things that keep us from developing the meaningful relationships that we need. And what we've said so far is that there are at least 3 significant barriers to this, and one, that we're becoming increasingly isolated in our culture, which ironically was actually the very first problem in humanity. On page 1 in Genesis, everything was good, and then on page 2, we discovered that mankind was alone, and that was not good for people to be alone, and so God created community. The other thing we discussed was the Surgeon General's release of an advisory on an epidemic of loneliness and isolation and all the harm of being isolated and how harmful that actually is, and it's not good. We've also discovered that we are leaning towards more and more independence, and this started when we were young because we were told that moving from dependence to independence was a sign of maturity, and that there's nothing really wrong with that at all, but we move more and more and more in that direction, and we're not meant to face life solely on our own. That independent. And then the New Testament has over 100 times where it talks about what we're to be toward one another, which is why we actually have done this series, because we actually need one another, and it is important that we live interdependent with one another in all types of healthy relationships. And when we don't, it's what we're going to talk about today. Because when we don't live interdependently, it is much easier to just remove the people that we disagree with from our social media, from our circle of friends, and ultimately from our lives, which is exactly where we are in our culture today. We collectively and individually, we have become far more insulated. Insulated in our views, and from people that disagree with us, and that's actually something that is not great for us. We're living in a curated world. You know this, but we just don't talk about this in public very often. But we only follow and watch and only are friends online with people that agree with us and have the same opinions of things. And our primary information curation comes from all of these guys right here. With our likes and our dislikes, they curate what we want to see and what makes us feel good. And we easily dislike and unfriend and unfollow and cancel those things that disagree with us, and then conveniently, we don't have to deal with them. And it makes us feel better. In fact, it makes us feel safer. And it makes us feel like life is simpler. And that's sort of our motivation, and logically that feels good to us, but I'm here to tell you today that is not good for us. And so today I want us to talk about relationships that actually disrupt or challenge us. And here's my disclaimer. I want to put a disclaimer on the message, and the disclaimer is for the entire message, for everything I say. Because I am not talking about when we have to distance ourselves from certain people that are detrimental or toxic or specifically abusive. That's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about how many of us have unfriended or unfollowed people that were once close and valuable friends. And we ended up doing that over views of pandemic opinions or political opinions or some disagreement. And maybe we agree with them on everything else. but now we see them differently, and knowing what we know now, is that actually safer? Was it actually simpler for you to unfriend and distance yourself from them? And when you think about your closest relationships, how many relationships do you have that would be completely unaffected if you found out that they voted for her? How many friendships would be completely unaffected if you found out they voted for him? I mean, would that friendship be completely unaffected? Because your view of that person, their judgment, their wisdom, their sanity, you're just saying it wouldn't even be called into question. I mean, it's a real question to ask because that's the world we're living in. And you should think about this because for many of us, the answer is how many of those friends will be unaffected? Would be zero because it would affect the friendship. And why is that? We live in this world where we've curated even our closest friendships. And it can seem a lot simpler, but it's not simpler. It just makes you simple. It makes you simple-minded to do that. And it's actually you depriving yourself just because you disagree, because it insulates you from other disrupting views that you need in your life. I mean, come on, even neurologically, nothing promotes growth more than a challenging contradiction. And we're trying to curate all of that out of our lives when it's actually proven to improve you mentally. Challenge stimulates new brain function, which proves from a neuroscience perspective that it's not good for you to get rid of all the disagreement and all the things that you don't agree with. And it's precisely why Proverbs in the Old Testament says this, that as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And we all know that phrase and we like that phrase, but we don't often think about the violence in that phrase. As iron sharpens iron, it's like two strong things running into each other, and that's how you sharpen one another, and they actually make each other sharper and stronger, and it seems simpler and safer to just avoid that. But you know this. There is no growth in your comfort zone, and there's no comfort in your growth zone. And so look, if you want to grow, this comfortable world that we've curated is not the right environment for that. And so why do we push back on that? Because the truth is, what it does is it exposes an insecurity in us. And it's why we're threatened by it. And so we will try to get rid of it because we don't like how it makes us feel. And our culture not only gives us permission to cancel and remove and unfriend and unfollow the people that disagree with us, not just permission, our culture actually applies pressure to do that. And do you know what the sign that you are being pressured to do that is? It's when you feel threatened. Because culture says that person is bad, that person is evil, and you should get rid of that person because you feel threatened. But we are the ones that lose when we do that. And it is possible, let me ask you, is it possible that we feel threatened and what we feel threatened by is not actually them, but it's because of something that maybe is happening inside of us? And so the Apostle Paul fortunately addresses this in the New Testament as he's writing to a group of people in a church that he started, and now he's coaching them in dealing with internal conflict. And he says, okay, I want to just start from ground zero, and I want us to build a new foundation. And here's what he says. He says, in this new life, it doesn't matter if you're Jew or Gentile, if you're circumcised or uncircumcised, if you're barbaric, if you're uncivilized, if you are a slave, or if you're free. So first of all, wow, what a diverse group of people. I mean, differing opinions and backgrounds and viewpoints and experiences. I mean, aren't the beliefs in that verse just all over the place? Which when you think about this, when it comes to our beliefs, there are really just three different types of beliefs, and you don't always know which type of belief that you have, but there are three. Some of our beliefs are based in facts, or based on fact. Like these are the things that are just really true, and maybe we know they're true, maybe we don't know they're true, but we often think all the things, isn't it true? We often think that all the things that we believe are facts, but that's not true. Not everything you believe is a fact. Because some of your beliefs are just opinions. And you think you're right, but you just haven't run into something that broke or reshaped that opinion yet. And then here's the other one. The other one is just simply feelings. It's not even the level of opinion. It's more like, yeah, this is just what I think, and it's how I feel. It's sort of like a gut reaction, and some of those feelings might be right, but many of them are not. And so there's literally 3 different levels of belief. And when it comes to our belief, the level of certainty increases as we go up. But there's only a few things at the top here. There's just a few. These are the things we know that are true, but there's more things that are just our opinions, and even more things that we just have strong feelings about that are not really facts. It's just what we believe because we feel that way or we think that way. And the Apostle Paul is trying to bring some clarity to this, and he says, there's only a few things up there at the top that you need to know. And here's what he says. Christ is all that matters, and he lives in all of us. And so in this new life, it doesn't matter what your background is. You've got different views and you've got different opinions, or you come from different places. Paul's saying, not a problem. But here's what you need to know is that Jesus Christ is all that matters, and he's in all of you. And that's really, really important because this is how relationships work. And look, you know this, as you move down this cone, you move to different depths of relationship. I mean, think about this. If you just have factual conversations about weather and time and what's going on in the news, aren't those just surface basic relationships? But as we share opinions and feelings, relationships move to new depth. And isn't it true that many relationships have a hard time getting past the opinion level to the feeling level? Where we end up forging the deepest friendships and the most intimate relationships. This is why this canceled culture has had a profound effect on us over the last few years. And now our primary insecurity is not sharing feelings. We don't even go to that level. Our primary insecurity is sharing opinions. And the reason is for fear of being judged or rejected by people, or maybe even subconsciously we do this because we don't want to have to deal with the people that could reject us, and we do this thinking it's going to protect us. And it's the same thing we do for our kids. We insulate them from rejection and failure because we want to protect them. But do you know that that actually makes them weaker and less resilient? And look, I'm not judging you. We've done it too. As a result, we're becoming a more and more fragile society, which is why it's hard to have conversations about anything meaningful with people that may disagree with us because we're afraid of rejection or being cut off. So we're just quick to move that out or cancel that or reject them. And our relationships across the culture are just shallow. And it's often the way also, might I bring up, often it's this way inside the church as well. But let me just say it this way. That is the way of the culture. It is not the way of Jesus. And the Apostle Paul tells us as he goes on, he says this, since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourself with tender-hearted mercy and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. And I think he chose his words very carefully because this is how you present yourself. He's saying this is what you put on. It's not necessarily your natural reaction. He's saying when you wake up in the morning, I want you to put on tender-hearted mercy and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience as you go out into your family and out into your job in the world. God chose you. He set you apart as his. He gave you this new life of Jesus in you, and this is how he wants you to represent him in the culture. Can you imagine if we approached one another this way? But actually, this is actually really easy to do when we all agree. Because some of us are going, oh yeah, well I do that. Well, that's because we live in a curated, insulated world. And it's easy to do it when everybody just agrees with us. He goes on, and here's what he says. He says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Like move towards people with tender-hearted mercy and humility and kindness and patience, even if they're wrong, even if they offend you. And he says, because I want you to remember, the Lord forgave you, and so you must forgive one another. He's saying, you've made your mistakes and you needed to grow. We still do. Remember how God treats us with kindness and patience and forgiveness, and forgiving us the way that we ought to forgive other people. That's the Jesus way. That's what followers of Jesus look like. That's what Jesus followers clothe themselves with in this culture. And he says this, and above all, clothe yourself with love. Which means do what's loving. Well, what is loving? Well, there is no greater love than to lay down your life and sacrifice for your friends like Jesus did. He sacrificed his life for us. That's the way of love. Clothe yourself with that. Be willing to sacrifice. And what he says is, he says, with love. And he says, what does this love do? It binds us all together in perfect unity. And when somebody else is wrong and when you feel insecure, it's like you're the one that ought to approach them in sacrificial love, choosing to sacrifice on your end because this is what Jesus has done for you. And the truth is, we don't do that very often or very well because we prefer being around people who make us feel good about ourselves. But when you think about this way of sacrifice, the people that say hard things to us, isn't that actually loving? I mean, that's real love when you have a friend who will risk the friendship. Like, I'm going to say something, and I know it may cost our friendship, but I just want you to know that if you advance, you are more important than even that. And so I may lose something, but I don't want to lose you. He goes on to say, he says, let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace with one another. That is so foundational for us. And it's from this foundation we get greater confidence in the midst of diverse opinions and perspectives and ideas. You don't have to be insecure because Christ rules in you. Who you are is secure regardless of the people that you associate with or what people say about you. You're secure regardless of what ideas come or what someone says, what candidate or what not candidate. You're secure because of Christ is in you. And it's like, oh yeah, because you supported that, you believe all those other things too. Isn't that our world? That's what we do in our culture. And so what we do is we feel threatened by that. Well, you believe all those things. But here's the thing. Feeling threatened simply by viewpoints and opinions of other people is evidence that there is something else governing our lives. And do you know what it is most of the time when we feel that threatening? It's not the rule of Christ. It's not Christ in us. Most of the time when we feel threatened, it's our pride because we want to be right. It's fear of an online mob that might attack you for something that you say or believe. But pride and fear are not what Jesus uses to motivate us in our lives. And so what does all this mean for us? I'd like to suggest that there are 3 keys to surviving and creating and keeping the type of diverse, meaningful friendships that actually help us grow. The first one is this: you've got to be clear. You've got to be clear about what is foundational for you and your life and your relationships. And this connects us back to the factual level. What are you most certain about? It's not the deepest level of friendship, don't miss this, but it is the most foundational level of relationship. It forms a strong foundation of your relationships. Look, common ground is what determines strength in relationships. And when common ground is weak, when there are things like, but hey, he's really cute, or like, man, she really makes me feel good about myself, or hey, they've got a lot of money and they do a lot of nice things for me. When it's those types of things, that's not a strong relationship. The more factual common ground in our relationships, the stronger the foundation of the relationship is. And that's why Paul, when it comes to your life in Christ, that's why he's saying that's all that matters. If you call yourself a Jesus follower, what is very top in you is Jesus in you. And Jesus in that other person. That has got to be primary for you. Because what creates a stronger foundation in our relationships, regardless of differing beliefs or opinions, because you can survive all those things if you have a strong foundation. The second thing we've got to do that will help us is we've got to learn to be curious again. Doesn't it seem like we've lost that in our culture? I mean, when was the last time somebody brought up a differing idea to you or challenged your belief on something, and instead of arguing your point or coming back with your rebuttal, you just said, tell me more? I mean, what makes you say that? I'd be interested in knowing how you got to that point. What happens is our pride and our fear get in the way, and pride and fear are the enemy of curiosity, so we don't ask. Here's what we do. We end up elevating our opinions above empathy. And empathy requires us to pause our ego and see something from someone else's perspective. Empathy leads to a deeper understanding. It leads to deeper relationship. And let me just say, curiosity and empathy don't mean agreement or alignment. Let me say that again. When I'm curious or you're curious or we have empathy towards someone else who believes something completely different than us, it does not mean agreement and it does not mean alignment. Like, you don't have to agree and align with somebody else's belief to be curious and empathetic. But when you are, it cultivates a new depth with the person we're talking to. Brene Brown said this: people are hard to hate close up. I mean, when somebody disagrees and you're tempted to cancel or dislike or unfollow, what if you just got curious and decided to lean in and move towards them? As the old saying goes, maybe walk a mile in their shoes. Become empathetic. I mean, if you really want to be radical in this cancel culture we've been living in, that's how you do it. You literally cancel the cancel culture. This culture that hooks us with the bait of guilt by association, which, by the way, is something Jesus never ever worried about or was concerned about. He just never worried about guilt by association. He saw it as an opportunity to influence by listening and being empathetic and understanding and meeting needs, and he just did it over and over and over again. He didn't care who you saw him with. And so we have to be clear and curious. And the third thing we've got to do is be cautious, to which some of you are thinking, okay, finally, all this crazy talk, now we're making some sense because now we got some caution up there, right? But this is not what you think. In fact, here's why you need to be cautious. Because our feelings and our emotions, more than anything else, cloud our decision making. God gave us emotions as signals. Positive emotions are signals of things that are right, and negative emotions are signals of things that something's wrong. And here's the problem. When we experience a negative emotion in a relationship, we instinctively think, what's wrong with them? Is it possible? Could it be that negative emotion you're feeling is not something wrong with them, but something wrong in us? Our emotions have the ability to betray us, and too often we allow relationships to be destroyed because we've misplaced what's wrong in them when it's something going on in us. True, meaningful, healthy relationships are becoming scarce in our world, particularly among people like us who are adults. In a world where we're becoming more isolated, we have to be more intentional about these relationships and not just have convenient relationships and functional relationships, but as adults, you need people you can find common ground with and then forge deep, meaningful, interdependent relationships. And many of you know this. Maybe some of you don't know. But we want our culture here in our church to be a certain culture. Let me tell you what we're aiming at. We're aiming at being the most diverse church in every way possible, which, by the way, is really fun and really challenging. We are not just okay with that idea of diversity. We're literally embracing diversity politically, racially, economically, generationally, all the varying thoughts and beliefs that come along with that. And let me just tell you, it's beautiful and it's challenging, but our culture is working against us being able to do that. So we must keep the essential thing essential, which is Jesus, who he is, and what he did for each one of us, no matter where we land on topics or issues of the day. He is the top. And we have to be clear about that. And we've got to be curious of why other people's opinions are what they are and be cautious about our feelings and emotions because they will betray you in a heartbeat. So I want to encourage you. If you're not engaged and you're not connected in your church, right now, if you haven't already sensed it, is a season of connection for us. Like literally stepping across the line to serve someone else in some of these areas we're bringing up. You're going to start hearing about being in relationships through small groups over the next few weeks coming up. If you're not engaged in your church, if you're not connected in your church, let me just tell you, more than ever, now is the time. I'd like to end with the Surgeon General warning once again. That if we fail to build more connected society and live more connected lives, we will pay an ever-increasing price in the form of our individual and collective health and well-being. And we will continue to splinter and divide until we can no longer stand as a community or as a country. Instead of coming together to take on the greatest challenges before us, we will further retreat to our corners, angry, sick, and alone. And I say, not here. I say, not on our watch. Even in our disagreements, Christ and his life in us is all that matters. It is the foundation for us that allows us to hold and be pulled together no matter what our varying beliefs, opinions, and feelings are. And so I want you to know, that is my prayer for you. And that is my prayer for us. And we pray it in Jesus' name. Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you that you came for everyone and that no one is excluded, that no one is left out, that all are welcomed, all are accepted, all are loved, and we all stand on a level ground before you. And so, Father, would you help us to break out of this curated culture that we're living in so that we could fully develop into the people you called us to be? And not be so simple-minded or be pushed into being simple-minded by what's happening around us. Help us to follow you and look at how you lived in a culture of division. And to open our hearts and once again, be curious and empathetic and loving and forgiving to each soul that we encounter. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.